I'd like to welcome you to the Gulf Intelligence Halftime Talk feature interview series, where every week in the middle of the International Energy Trading Week, we take a deeper dive into the trends that are impacting the oil and gas markets around the world. And today we're going to focus in on natural gas, and we are honored to be joined by Dr. Joo-Myung Kang, the president of the International Gas Union. Dr. Joo-Myung Kang, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for having me here. I'm
Dr.
great
Joo,
honored to be here.
you're sitting in Korea.
Yeah.
The whole world has faced the big challenge and is still obviously facing the big challenge of the COVID pandemic. I would welcome your insights on how you think so far this change moment has impacted the adoption of natural gas, LNG as a power solution, and are we seeing, coming along with COVID, an acceleration towards natural gas, or is it interrupted the momentum that we clearly saw in recent years towards natural gas as the chosen fuel for power generation?
Yeah. That's a good question. Also, I think this is a pandemic we never experienced in the recent history. The impact is really huge, not only gas industry, global economy. So I think the energy industry is no immunity this pandemic. So I think that the impact is very powerful, and very resilient, and very persistent. So I think that's nowadays you can see the one of the example that the big player like Exxon, Chevron, Total, Eni, you name it, or the major, look at the day and the reduction in the work power and the budget and the capex and the write-off and the dividend reduction and you name it, everything is there. That tells us we suffering and the very serious dilemma in this middle of a pandemic. But I don't know after the pandemic how we can recover, the speed of recovering, or how the scale of recovery. So I think this
has it had any specific impact for gas? I mean, gas power consumption hasn't suffered as great as, let's say, oil consumption. So I'm wondering, has gas suffered as much? Obviously the price has come off, but has consumption come off?
Well, there is a pros and cons both sides, because this pandemic give us some bright spot on the environment issues. We can smell clean air thanks to really an industry slowdown. The global industry is burn less fossil fuel. That's definitely help us environment issue. But the gas industry side, and almost second quarter of this year, we already have the 10% of reduction of consumption, especially in the demand has really down to the almost really huge.
Not as bad as
oil, really
was down 20. Oil lost 25%. So relatively speaking, gas held up.
Yes, a little bit, and compared to the oil, I think what I see the future of oil is rather than fossil fuel and the raw material, because we're going to switch around all the fuel to the raw material, and we cannot live without the really fabrics that come from the oil chemicals. So that is what I'm saying is oil. We're going to put on the more emphasis on the raw material rather than fuel. So that's why oil has a much severe impact compared to the gas. But the thing is, the gas industry is we and the people in the earth already enjoy the clean air. They're not going to give up. So I think a power switch from the coal fire, the burner, to the gas fire, that's the solution. Look at the example between the German and the BK. German developed the large renewables, but all the renewable power switched to the nuclear. But the BK switched the renewable to the coal-fired burner. So that's why they can reach the coal phase out is by 2025. So I think that back to your question, gas industry is originated from the demand side, because the supply side is that they are ready to the increase their capacity, but demand side, industry is down, less transportation, less fly, less sale. That's a reduce
You
the
have the
gas
International
consumption.
Gas Union has a special report coming up shortly, and I
Yes.
wonder if you could share some of the highlights of its findings.
Yeah, I think that's, let me summarize some of them. And we have five flagship publication. One is LNG report, global gas report, and the gas technology report, and with some of the Boston consulting company and the Bloomberg and the SNAM, and we have a lot of sponsors. But the basic things, deployment of a gas technology into the power sector provide two cons, two pros. One is less emission, also the boost up their national economy. So that's why, and the key issue, key message from that report is gas is not only bridge fuel. There is, we don't know how long it will go, but definitely they help reduce emission and the pollution.
What about in the power generation? We're seeing
Okay.
renewables become very competitive with price point against fossil fuels. Will gas be able to compete?
Yeah, I think that's when you say the cost, where you look at it, you get from the field to the well, there is a full cycle analysis totally different. When you say renewable, let's say in the solar cell, where the solar cell come from? There is a ceramics. You have to put on a lot of energy to make a solar cell. Then when the life of the solar cell is reached, and then how we're gonna recycle? There is when you recycle, everything is a product, and the solar cell that consumes the energy. But the gas is a very unique advantage. When you need it, you just burn it. Less pollution. That's the uniqueness of gas. So now it's also the International Gas Union is not natural gas only. We are very inclusive of hydrogen, renewable gas, blue gas, and biogas. This is the time span is a little different. We are almost 80% of our activity is focused on the natural gas now, but in maybe 10 or 20 years, hydrogen, biogas. So we are open to for the future.
You said there that gas is not a bridge fuel.
Yeah.
What is your thinking on that? A lot of people refer to gas as the bridge fuel for the low carbon economy. Why is it not a bridge fuel?
Well, and what kind of bridge you're looking at? The temporary bridge and the permanent bridge. London Bridge is a more or less a permanent bridge. So when you say the renewable energy, they have inherent character, intermittency, and the seasonality. Who's going to compensate that cons? Gas can compensate. That's why we declare gas will be hand-in-hand partner with the renewables. So the more renewable share in the global energy mix, the more gas you need to compensate the seasonality.
One of the things we're seeing, Doctor, is the increasing use of sanctions around gas producing countries or the distribution of gas. At the moment, there's a very big story about Nord Stream 2, putting gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, sanctions on Iran, sanctions, there's a dispute between Qatar and its neighbors. There's just a lot of politics around gas distribution and pipelines. I'm wondering, what is the IGU's opinion on that?
Well, Sean, you asked me a very difficult question. So IGU is not a political organization. We are the association. So usually we not comment on the political things, but in reality, energy is already domain of politics. But we emphasize on the transparency and open system. So usually sanction doesn't go that way. So I think we try to the away from the politics. We just focus on the demand, market-driven mechanism. So that is our stance.
Prior to
definitely,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely the present sanction and the Russia pipeline sanction and the Qatar sanction really, and the politics is really and deeply involved with the energy sector. Just like a pandemic, I mean, our future destiny of the energy industry not determined by and the energy expert, determined by and the virus expert. The same thing. So I think this nowadays energy is not their destiny is not determined by and energy people, politics, and the virus, and so many kinds.
Increasingly, obviously, as we saw in the previous Cold War era of the U.S., Soviet, the West, and the Soviet Union, countries were forced to choose, companies forced to choose sides, etc. And that's maybe another problem in the future. But since before the COVID came along, the U.S. had become a pretty significant gas producer and gas exporter. I'm wondering what impact that had on the markets from your perspective, and what is the outlook for that exporting gas out of the US after COVID?
Well, I think we have to look at the supply side and the demand side. US is maybe 10 years ago, they built LNG facility, the regasification facility for the import of gas. Now it's things turn around. So they are the #1 producer, also the second largest exporter in the world now in terms of LNG. But and the Henry price now is less than $2. Also the toll fee in the LNG facility is they maybe in the 5 or 6 years they the almost three and more than $3. Now down to the $2 per MMBTU. So totally different economic we are facing now. So I think that's that the market, the industry should be in the win-win strategy, not the supply and the supply side, the demand side should be balanced. For example, and let's say in the Asian market, because LNG market is almost 70% of a total market share in the Asia. So, and the Panama capacity, they can, at the present, the Panama capacity can pass through the almost 3 or 30 or 40 million tons per year. So now is most of our LNG plant is shut down because they cannot survive. Let's say, and $2 annual price, add up to the $3 and the LNG price, then that's a $5, right? And the gathering, forget about the gathering. Then the shipping cost to get to the Asia is 1.5, $6.5 per MMBTU. But now Japan Korea market is now $2.2 MMBTU. So even you have a commitment to contract with LNG facility located in the Gulf Coast, that plant is not operating anymore. So if you import,
but is that going to last, do you think?
Yes, I don't know. That's but I think that's if LNG price up to around $7, then U.S. gas developer come back. But at the present market, all the small shale developer, they're gonna close out. So they don't have a feed gas. The LNG facility is shut down. That is really increase and the gas price in the coming future. But I don't know when. I see that maybe after pandemic and most of economic predict and really the creep and the jump to the economy, maybe at that time and the gas price will go up. So I think 2017 and the 2018 was a really peak of gas industry. Now Go ahead.
2017 and 2018 was the peak of the gas industry.
That's true.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, at the time, and the consumption of gas is really huge. So at the time, and usually gas has around 400 million tons. No, 4 billion tons per year production. Then almost 10% from the LNG, 20% of pipeline. So if we reach the trading volume of the natural gas, reach it 40%, we can say this is a global product. We didn't reach that stage yet. So natural gas reached a global product, then we don't have any Asian premium, and we have three segregated market: Asian market, European market, the North American market. But when you reach the 40% of a trading volume of natural gas, we can say natural gas can be global product.
You have a situation where the U.S. exports are declining for LNG, and they're uncertain, I would say, the future of U.S. LNG exports under these economic numbers. But Qatar, one of the world's largest LNG producers, is increasing production quite significantly over the next 5 years. Do you think there is demand for that scale of new LNG?
Well, you have to think at this, that is a supply side. Also, you have to look at the demand side. Asian market already enjoy the low price of natural gas, because also the Asian buyer is getting smart. So they know what the cost is. So I don't think the Middle East can enjoy that high price. Even US gas price is, shale developer is really in decade. So I think that's a win-win strategy in the global gas market. And the Henry price is around 3.5 dollars MMBTU. Then in the Asian premium market, LNG market is $7 or $8. That is a really green price, I would say.
What even about the price point, but also the Middle East producers have been following the model of oil index, not Henry Hub. Will Asian buyers seek for Middle East producers to move away from oil index?
Yeah, I think that's where the oil index come from. The heating value ratio between oil and gas is 1 to 6. That's why, and the slope is 0.15. So that's why, and the oil price is, when you look at the only heating value, the only, let's say, and the oil price is $60, gas price is $10 will be, and the heating value is that balance. But that is really distorted all the days. That's why the producer tend to stick around the oil index, but the Asian market going to the Henry the whole market. So now is most of Korean industry, they're gonna stick around the hybrid formula, half of the oil index, half of hybrid. So I think that's definitely, and the producer stick around the oil index policy. But
well, I suppose
Asian market,
the U.S. exporting of gas to Asia has given the Asian buyers more power to negotiate with the Middle East suppliers.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is a U.S. shale is a game changer, because we have to use gas without the other source of the import. At the time, only Russia and Qatar can export. Also, the production cost in Qatar is no comparison between the shale gas. Shale gas is around $3 and something like a production cost, but Qatar is less than dollar, maybe in cents. So no comparison. So I think the supply side, a really game changer is Yamal and North Arctic. That is, they're gonna go up to around 75 million tons per year. That will be a big game changer compared to the U.S. shale gas, because the U.S. shale gas can export only.
Can the demand centers of Asia continue to grow for gas? I mean, putting China aside, LNG, Korea and Japan are very mature markets now,
That's
25
true.
years more on LNG imports. Can they continue to grow, or have they reached a plateau and the only growth really is in China?
Yeah, I think that let's forget about the China.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Japan and Korea. Korea is really and very and bold the plan to switch around from the coal, nuclear to the gas, also the renewable. That's why and presently Korea consumed around 40 million tons per year. Then if we phase out the coal fire, and reduce the capacity of nuclear renewable. So future is the gas market wise, especially in the demand side, Korea's market is very bright. So I think maybe in the within 5 years, Korean market jumped to the maybe and hopefully in the 60 million tons per year.
And what other aspects does the Asian consumers demand in the change in pricing? I'm not only pricing of LNG, but the destination clauses, the term period. What other demands will Asian consumers expect from Middle East producers, do you think, over the coming decade?
Well, and I don't have any intention representing and Korean gas industry, but
Sure.
as a president of IGU, so ours and the
But Asia as a whole, all customers in Asia are making more demands on Middle East suppliers. What do you think is the top 3 or 4 things on that list? We mentioned price, oil index. What else?
Well, definitely the destination clause. Also, the oil index is we try to a little bit get away from that really and the rigid and restriction, but really depending on the negotiation and the partner to the partners, contract to the contractor. So I think that's when the natural gas reaches to the global product, all this the hurdle will be removed sooner or later. So I think that another thing is not only price, also technology. So, for example, and is gas infrastructure requires huge money. So maybe the pure country cannot afford it, but they're gonna step by step, like Bangladesh. They cannot. They have a really huge population, but they don't have enough money invested all the infrastructure of natural gas, the switch around the coal to the gas. But they're gonna start it with the FSRU, also the small-scale LNG plant and the small-scale regasification plant. So they're going to start with the 500,000 tons per year. Then and the people are really enjoying and advantage of a gas power sector. Then they're going to increase. So the thing is in the Asian market is price is one sector. The other one is a government policy. How they urgently need switch to the coal fire to the gas burner. So that is a policy, technology, and the price. This is really.
Do you think gas can continue to displace coal in Asia, in China?
I think so. And I don't know how soon, but maybe in the 10 or 20 years, we have to notice one thing. And the European coal-fired power generation is almost 38 years old. Asian
still a big percentage of the fuel mix in Germany,
yes.
For example,
yes.
is coal, 40% or close to 40%.
Yeah, but the age of the coal-fired generator is almost 38. Sooner or later, they're going to retire. Right. But the Asian coal-fired generator in the Asian region is only the 11 years old. Another 20 years to go. But the more or less, they're going to, but how the climate issue is strongly and motivated policymaker in the Asia region. We still have a coal. It doesn't mean we have to burn it. Even we have a coal because of environment issue, clean air policy, we have abandoned the coal fire generated.
I just want to finish up with talking a little bit about the Middle East. One of the interesting developments in the region is that we are becoming also an import region, having been for many decades an exporter of gas, a major exporter of gas to Korea and Japan, and now we are importing increasingly more LNG. How do you think that will impact global markets?
I think that's in terms of a gas market, I see the very positive sign, especially, and it's a little bit different story. What you said is Egypt, Israel, they import the huge gas. Now they try to the exporting gas. The same token, and some of Middle East country, they're going to export oil, import the gas because of price difference. So I think this, in terms of the growth of a gas market, this phenomena is I see the very positive way.
There's a very big move. I mean, Saudi Arabia is still burning close to 1 million barrels of oil liquids for power generation. Right now, today, over the summer months, the peak demand period, there's clearly a great opportunity for more gas to come into the Middle East. Are you concerned that that might restrict the amount of gas available to Asia?
Well, the population of Saudi is not that huge compared to the other region in the world. So also you cannot switch around the infrastructure with energy in a day. It takes some time. So I think, but the trend is direction, trajectory is a very positive way. I think that's Saudi, maybe, and they're going to have consumed the burnout of flare gas. And that flare gas is really a negative damage on the environment issue. So they're going to the methane emission issues and the carbon emission issues, all things are put together on the table. Then we might have some antidote over the energy problem.
So let's just wrap up, Dr. Joo, with your outlook for the second half of 2020. We had an incredibly disruptive first half. Now we have the second half, and we're seeing still a lot of government stimulus. Literally overnight, the European Union announced nearly a $2 trillion stimulus package. What is your outlook for the second half of 2020 as the world grapples with a second wave of COVID?
Well, what I see is, as I said at the beginning of the discussion, and the destiny of energy industry is not determined by the energy expert, not like an IGO president, more or less a virus the expert. So I see the second quarter of the 2020 really depending on how pandemic progress and getting deeper. So I see that as soon as we get over this pandemic, it takes some time. I think it's maybe for some time, 1 year, we have to live with this pandemic, because we see the very and the positive sign. As I said, in the Daegu case, they have around 9,000 cases just 1 week, but that reduced to zero. Only it takes 53 days. So I think we reach it to the ceiling, we can come down very easily. So I think that how soon we recover this pandemic, then and all the industry is back up right away. So I think that's why, and maybe and the renewable will be and go first, and to compensate the renewables, the seasonality, intermittency, maybe in the natural gas go with it. But definitely, and the coal-fired generator will be switched by the natural gas. So I think the future of natural gas, I see the very bright right after the pandemic.
Well, we will leave it there and hope and obviously look to the leadership of the political leadership to navigate through this COVID crisis, and perhaps and hopefully good leadership, wise leadership will, as you say, allow for COVID to be kept under control.
Yes.
I think in the world today, we're seeing a mix of good leadership and not so good leadership. But Dr. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on Halftime Talk. It's very important for our Middle East listeners and watch to have an understanding of the vision of the International Gas Union for the outlook of natural gas at this time. So thank you for joining us on Halftime Talk.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean, and it's an honor to be in your show.